Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has once again drawn all the attention for all the wrong reasons. This time, the government issued an ordinance on the Constitutional Council inviting serious flak from all the quarters. The executive head's move on this occasion has been seen as a blatant violation of constitutional norms and practices. Good morning, I'm Amar Singh Pradhan and these are the headlines of the hour. The government introduces an ordinance on Constitutional Council, the amendment to allow the Council to make decisions with just 3 votes. The ordinance on Constitutional Council comes under serious flak. Leaders of the ruling and opposition parties criticize the move and call to withdraw the ordinance. The government directs concerned authorities for actions against sugar mills failing to clear their dues, some relief for protesting sugarcane farmers. And Wolves come from behind to stun Chelsea in the English Premier League. Manchester City held to a 1-1 draw by West Brom. The government introduced an ordinance to the Constitutional Council Act yesterday. President Bida Devi Bhandari endorsed the ordinance upon the recommendation of the cabinet meeting held yesterday itself. Based on the amendment, the meeting of the Constitutional Council can now be held in the presence of a majority of sitting members and the meeting can issue decisions based on majority. According to the new provision, the meeting can be held in the presence of 3 members, including the Prime Minister. Likewise, 3 votes, including that of the Prime Minister on the candidate proposed by the Premier itself, can be enough for the Council to make recommendations for appointments at constitutional bodies. Premier Oli introduced the ordinance after failing to convene the Council meeting, citing lack of quorum. The Constitutional Council meeting had failed to take place in the past 1 year due to disputes in power sharing. The Council meeting held yesterday evening at the Prime Minister's official residence in Balwatar was attended by Chief Justice Cholendra Samchar Rana and Chairman of the National Assembly Ganesh Timalsina. President of the main opposition Sher Bahadur Deuba and Speaker Agni Sapkota boycotted the meeting. Prior to the ordinance, the chairman and at least 4 members of the council had to be in attendance for the meeting to take place. It may be recalled that back in April earlier this year, the government was compelled to withdraw a similar ordinance following widespread criticism. Meanwhile, leaders from the ruling Nepal Communist Party and the main opposition Nepali Congress have expressed reservations against the ordinance put forth by the government for the Constitutional Council Act. The disgruntled faction within the ruling Nepal Communist Party has expressed reservations against Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli's decision to introduce the ordinance without consulting the party. The dissident faction has also demanded that the Prime Minister withdraw the ordinance at the earliest. Speaking with Kantipur television, former Prime Minister and senior leader of NCP Madhav Kumar Nepal said that the party cannot support the Prime Minister's latest move. Nepal added that the Premier had been misleading party leaders, lawmakers and committees and claimed the issue will be tabled at the standing committee meeting scheduled for today. Likewise, senior leader Jhalanath Khanal said today's standing committee meeting would focus on the issue as the motive behind ordinance was unclear. Leaders from the disgruntled faction had held a meeting at Executive Chairman Dahal's residence in Kumaltar, deciding to oppose the ordinance. Meanwhile, senior leader of Nepali Congress, Ramchandra Paudel, has said that the government should withdraw the ordinance, calling the House meeting at the earliest.
बिल्कुलै यसको विरोध हामी गर्छौं र म त भन्छु कि यो संसद तुरुन्त बोलाएर यसलाई अध्यादेशलाई खारेज गराउनु पर्छ र हामी यसको विरुद्धमा कडा प्रतिक्रिया हामीले त्यही दिन्छौं र सदन आकस्मिक सदन बोलाउने एउटा अभियान चलाएर पार्टीहरूले यसलाई खारेज गराउनु पर्छ.
And in the context of the government promulgating the Constitutional Council ordinance, we are having a talk with Dr. Surya Dhungel. Dr. Dhungel, welcome to Kantipur News.
Yes, yeah, well, good morning.
Dr. Dungal, as an expert on constitutional laws, what's your take on the promulgation of Ordinance on Constitutional Council by the government yesterday?
Actually, this is an indication of a serious constitutional crisis as well as political crisis, as the trust of the government, of the trust of the Prime Minister on the members of the Constitutional Council, which is constituted by the top institutions of the nation, and the Prime Minister is not able to hold the meeting because of the absence of the members of the council. So, in order to ensure that the council continues to hold its meeting, he has to issue an ordinance through the president, which is quite unconstitutional, very unusual, and this reflects the really constitution heading towards the serious constitutional crisis and collapse.
Dr. Dungal, at a time when President's role has come into the limelight, when she should have played a neutral role, so how do you take yesterday's first recommendation by the Prime Minister, the executive head, and the swift endorsement by the President? How do you see the President's role?
This is again, this gives enough space for questioning the neutrality of the President, who is the head of the state and who should be really a neutral person, who should behave and who should act neutrally. And she should have really, when such the ordinance has been presented before her, she should have immediately advised the Prime Minister to reconsider it, to consult with the Attorney General or the legal advisors of the country. And actually, when she issued similarly such kind of ordinances in the past, when the Parliament is due to be called in about 2 weeks' time, actually it's very unusual. And the President, at such a moment when the Constitution is in crisis, she should really act as a very matured head of the state and advisor to the Prime Minister, and she should have advised the Prime Minister to reconsider it rather than really accepting it immediately.
In this same context, like the same ordinance was also promulgated 7 months ago, and it was later withdrawn by the government. So how do you see a similar likelihood this time around?
Actually, the President should have taken earlier this earlier experience, earlier withdrawal of the ordinance within 4 days as a lesson learned from the wrong move of the President and the Prime Minister. And it shows that the Prime Minister is trying to play with the Constitution, and the Constitutional Council is a very highest level of body which is responsible to appoint people at the various commissions and high-level officials of various commissions. And I think in such a situation, when such meetings and the ordinance issued for really holding during the time when this Constitutional Council meeting was being held, and the repetition of the same issuance of the ordinance is very unusual, and it shows that the government, the leader of the government, the Prime Minister, is trying to play with the Constitution and trying to really pressurize the President for the benefit of the very petty interest of the Prime Minister himself to hold such meetings. And at the same time, I would also like to point out that when such meetings are called by the Prime Minister, Constitutional Council, which is constituted by the heads of various institutions, so absence, denial of some of the members to attend the meeting called by the Prime Minister is also unusual. So therefore, this shows that the Constitution is heading towards dysfunctioning the Constitution, and it may lead to the constitutional collapse.
Thank you, Dr. Dungal. That was Dr. Surya Dungal, a constitutional law expert, sharing his views on the latest move of the government to introduce Ordinance on Constitutional Council. Thank you, Dr. Dungal, for your valuable time. Okay, we move ahead to Some other news. The steady rise of coronavirus continues in the country as a total of 936 COVID-19 cases were reported yesterday, taking the total number of coronavirus cases to 250,180. The COVID-19 death toll in the country has now reached 1,730, with 14 more deaths reported yesterday. Out of the 7,117 samples tested in the past 24 hours, 13% tested positive for the virus. Meanwhile, 1,996 individuals recovered from the virus, taking the recovery tally to 238,569. The recovery rate has climbed to 95.3%. According to the Health Ministry, there are 9,881 active cases in the country. The government has directed concerned authority for actions against sugar industrialists who have not cleared payments of sugarcane farmers. The decision was taken by a meeting held between Home Minister Ram Bahadur Thaba, Minister for Industry and Commerce Lekhraj Bhatta, Agriculture Minister Ghanashyam Bhusal and Federal Affairs Minister Hriday Tripathi earlier yesterday. The meeting was also attended by secretaries of each ministry and high officials of the police administration. The spokesperson for the Home Ministry, Chakra Bahadur Buddha, informed the media of the decision. Around 20,000 sugarcane farmers are yet to receive almost 900 million rupees from sugar industries. Sugarcane farmers have put up a strike at the capital's Maitigar Mandala, demanding for their payments that have been pending since 4 years. The farmers on Monday boycotted a meeting called by the Minister for Industry and Commerce, citing lack of guarantee of payment. And in our Public Voice segment, we had asked the locals in Parbat how will they use the skills learned from trainings during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's take a look at what they have to say.
तालिमलेबाट म अब आफूले गरेर व्यवसाय बन्ने पसल खोलेर आफै गर्न सक्ने आत्मबल छ।
कपडाहरु कसरी नाप्ने, कसरी नापोलिने, कसरी काट्ने र अनि सिलाउन नि अब आफूले ध्यान दिएर सिलाउन पर्यो। त्यही सबै सिकाउनु भयो।
सुरुवात हामीले भोटोबाट गरेका थियौं। अहिले भोटो, कुर्ता, म्याक्सी, सुरुवालहरु इत्यादि अरु धेरै कुराहरु हामीले सिकिसकेका छौं।
बच्चाका कपडाहरु सिलाएर यतिकै अहिलेलाई सिकेकी छु। यो घरमा बस्दाखेरि नि यसो सजिलो भयो गरम भन्ने।
त्यसैबाट रोजगार गरेर म आफ्नो परिवारहरुलाई आफ्नो साथमा राख्न चाहन्छु।
आफ्नै गाउँमा टेलर खोलेर अनि बस्ने व्यावसायिक बनाएर बस्ने सोच छ।
व्यवसाय लिएर आफ्नो घर परिवार जीविकोपार्जन आफै गराउँछु।
काट्नी, सिलाउनी, नाप्नी एकदम गर्न सक्ने क्षमता भइसकेको छ।
And it's now time for our segment Public Pulse, where it texts us with their opinion.
Public Pulse.
The question is, why have the provincial governments spent more budgets on unproductive sectors? Our options are option A, confusion in priority, option B, catering to voters, and option C, lack of new projects. The voting is on. Type in AWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. And that's all for the moment. Stay with us for more news and entertainment. Have a good day.